Would you argue that Booking.com is the most successful OTAs in the world? And it's just about the cash, the money, the budget, the huge budget that they have in order to rank always in position number 1 on Google and all over the places. Or maybe there is something that they do better than others. And by others, I mean everybody else, including all those direct booking players that should guarantee and help hoteliers get more direct bookings. If there's one thing that I really like about Booking.com is that they are literally obsessed about details, because they know that details make the difference. And so today we're going to look into some of these details, the ones that in my opinion could also be easily replicated by us, our hotels, internally on our channels, on our direct channels, because they either require very little budget or probably no budget, and more importantly, no time, just a little bit of logic. These are more coming up, so let's dig in. Many things that we're going to see today are just about wording. In other words, copywriting. How do we say what we have to say? Or actually better say, how does Booking.com say what they have to say? Speaking of which, there's another video in which I talk about copywriting on hotels' website here in the top cards, so feel free to check that out. But back to Booking.com, let's see this example with the cancellations and payment. Let's compare, for example, free cancellation until time on day, as opposed to cancellation possible until time and day. Now, the literal meaning is exactly the same, but the perception of that meaning is totally different on a subconscious level. The word free, the adjective free, is very potent, is very powerful, because we like something free. The difference is not just about the word free, because yes, from a copywriting perspective, it's very powerful, it's very potent. However, the difference is also in the approach. Now, if you say cancellations are possible until they, now you're focusing on the restrictions, on the conditions in order to have that room. But if you say free cancellation until, you are focusing on the benefits. So you are offering or you highlighting what's even more included in that specific room and in that specific rate. Payment policies is exactly the same. And let's compare the two. No prepayment needed as opposed to credit card needed in order to guarantee the reservation. Again, the literal meaning may be the same, but the perception is totally different. On one side, no prepayment needed, you are focusing on the benefit of what you're selling. On the other side, credit card needed in order to guarantee the reservation, whatever the formula is, you are focusing on the restrictions, on the conditions in order to sell. So you are actually building a sort of wall between what you want to sell and what you want them to buy. And again, this is just a tiny little difference in the approach. Do you really want to focus on the negatives or the positives? Well, Booking focuses on the positives. On your booking engine, more likely, knowing many booking engines and how they label these policies, you're actually focusing on the negatives. Now let's stay here and let's focus on a tiny little thing that I really love about Booking.com. Now, on your booking engine or even offline, like on email or over the phone, more likely you sell breakfast. Now, check Booking.com is never breakfast. It's always something on top of it. It's always either very good, it's always good, it's always wonderful. There is always a positive and powerful and important adjective just before the breakfast. And again, think about it. You're facing two options, buying breakfast or buying a wonderful breakfast. Even if it's not wonderful, maybe it's just good or just very good, but it's anyway better than just breakfast. It's all about perception. It's not something that you logically think about, but it's something that you subconsciously digest and value. And there is where you win the battle. And again, about breakfast, check this out. Now, if I select a room or a rate that has a breakfast included, and the next step in the recap, I have in here breakfast included in the price. It sounds like a stupid thing. However, they are reassuring me about the breakfast being included and the way they're showing the breakfast. And this breakfast here, the way it shows up in this page, it looks like a benefit, like a feature, something that I got on top. So on my subconscious level, I got a little bit more value to what I have already chosen. Now let's jump into the guest details booking step, meaning the last step where I am required to enter all my information, personal details in order to complete the booking. And here, Booking.com is really a master. First of all, reassuring messages all over the places. Let's see them together. Now, this property is in a good location, guests have rated, and whatever the rate is. And another one, almost done, just fill in the required information. Do they add anything new to my reservation? Absolutely no. Doesn't it look like as if I have a personal assistant next to me? Literally, someone sitting next to me, guiding me through this reservation. Now, we probably work online, we're familiar with it, and we give many things for granted. But how many people do you know that might be probably tech challenged? And something like this is extremely powerful. As a matter of fact, I know people who don't even know how to turn on a laptop, but they can easily and comfortably make a booking on Booking.com. And isn't it something that we could potentially do? How long does it take, or how much does it take to have such an information, such a tiny little piece of content and the assuring message on our guest detail bookings tab? I'm not quite sure why booking engine providers don't have these kind of things. As far as I know, there are no booking engines that have this kind of feature. If you have the chance to implement, for example, tracking codes, usually tracking codes are JavaScript, and you can also deploy these kind of things with a couple of lines of JavaScript and CSS. So potentially this is possible, but of course, again, it depends on the booking engine provider that you have. Now let's continue with the guest details booking step, because we're not done yet. And now let's move on to something more practical, so way less subtle, something more practical. Split the guest details, so personal details, from the credit card details. As a matter of fact, if you notice, Booking.com never asks these two blocks of information in the same page. First name, last name, email address, and then in the next step, I will be asked to enter my credit card details. Why is that? Because their very first goal is to get the lead. They want my email address. And when they have my email, in the next step, even if I quit from my booking process, they can eventually send me some retargeting. It's email retargeting, and eventually email retargeting is free. There are actually a few booking engines that do have this feature that smartly split this kind of step. However, most of the booking engines do stick to actually combine everything together. I don't know exactly why. I guess because of the old belief by which actually everything needs to be in the same place. So we want to reduce as much as possible the number of steps. As a matter of fact, I remember up until 10 years ago where the real buzzword was actually trying to make the booking process as easy as possible from a number of clicks. As a matter of fact, we ended up creating, for example, a one-page booking. And as a matter of fact, a one-page booking doesn't exist anymore. And this is the big difference between OTAs and booking engines. The OTAs respond to the final customers, whilst booking engines respond to hotels. This is a tiny yet extremely important difference, because hotels are nothing but the products that the OTAs sell, but the booking engine providers. If tomorrow there are 200 hotels that wake up and say, I want a booking engine page that is yellow, they will need to deploy a booking engine page that looks like yellow, because otherwise they will end up losing those customers. It might be a little bit extreme, but this is how the process works. And this is why, from a marketing perspective, that will always have a competitive advantage. Last two things and then we're done. Limited supply in London on our dates. 3-4-star hotels like these are already unavailable on our site. Now, does this mean that there is really so much urgency because there is no availability in London in these dates? But anyway, urgency and scarcity actually work, and they make it work. It doesn't really matter for Booking.com the real availability, the real inventory in the locality, the real prices or average prices in that locality. They just need to leverage scarcity and urgency. And no matter what, you will always see such messages or variants of these messages all over the places because they actually work, period. And the last thing for today, even though we should be talking about this for 2 days in a row, is about this. Want to book a taxi or shuttle ride in advance? Or again, I'm interested in renting a car. Now, by ticking this option, there is no real, extra services that I can book. It's just an intention. I'm confirming an intention. And this is pretty smart in my opinion, because I am adding something on top of my reservation, me as a guest and as a user. So I am already kind of showing my interest in these kind of things. Yet Booking.com is not stopping me from completing the reservation. Again, those are tiny little differences, and the only effort that I made in here is just that I tick these two checkboxes, nothing more. Yet they could add more value to my booking, probably even more revenue to you hotel, even though you're going to be dealing with it at a later stage. So you are not creating and building up a wall between me, user, potential customer, and you hotel. I need to get into the booking in the fastest possible way. Again, there are so many things that we could talk about, but this is it for today. I hope you enjoyed, and let's see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.